They've been translated, and they tell exciting stories about how gods intermingled with human beings and actually had a hand in the creation of human beings.
The heat at the Telfara dig site was enough to melt rubber, but the team kept digging. They were looking for pottery shards. What they found was an anomaly, a room sealed so tight it had its own atmosphere. In the center sat a clay tablet protected like a nuclear secret. No scholar could read it. It took a supercomputer weeks to crack the cipher. But here's the catch. The translation isn't about ancient myths. It is a detailed log of a biological purge. And according to the AI, the cycle has just started again. The message in the mud. The discovery started on a day that was silent enough to hear your own heartbeat. We are in the outskirts of Telfara, widely accepted by historians as the location of Shuruppak. This was the last great metropolis of the Sumerian world, before it was wiped off the map by the Great Flood, around 2900 BCE. The team wasn't looking for monsters. They were looking for broken pots and maybe a few mud bricks. But here's the catch. The ground collapsed beneath a worker's boot. It opened up a cavity that had been deliberately hidden from the world. This wasn't an accidental burial. When the team lowered a light into the hole, they saw a room preserved in a total vacuum of time. It was small, cramped, and terrifyingly quiet. The air inside hadn't moved in 5 millennia. There were charred animal bones scattered on the floor and a reed basket overturned near the wall. It looked like someone had dropped it while running for their life. What most people don't realize is that finding a room like this is impossible. Most of Shuruppak was flattened by water. This room was sealed against the water. In the center of the chamber, sitting on a stone pedestal, was a protective clay casing. It was thick, heavy, and designed to survive the apocalypse. Ancient Sumerians didn't do this. They wrote on clay and left it on shelves to dry. They didn't build armored casings unless the message inside was worth dying for. When they cracked the casing open, the tablet inside was perfect. It was heavy, much heavier than the local clay density should allow. It felt dense like lead. The surface was covered in markings so faint and tight that the naked eye just saw a blur. The lead archaeologists realized immediately that this wasn't a receipt for grain or a list of kings. It was a message sent to the future. The team took high-resolution photos, but the shadows on the tablet shifted. The script didn't match any known language from the Uruk period. It looked alien. It looked engineered. They knew they couldn't read it, so they shipped the scans to a lab that specialized in pattern recognition. They thought they were solving a history puzzle. They had no idea they were opening a door they couldn't close. The machine saw something in the clay that terrified the engineers. The machine that froze. So, here's the deal. You don't usually use a military-grade AI to read ancient history. You use it to find patterns in the stock market or decode encrypted enemy signals. But this tablet was different. The researchers uploaded the high-resolution scans into an experimental system designed to find hidden structures and data. The engineers expected the AI to spit out a translation in a few minutes, maybe a recipe for beer or a prayer to Enlil. Instead, the system stalled. The cooling fans on the server rack spun up to maximum speed. The screen didn't show text. It showed a stability alert. The AI was flagging the tablet not as a language, but as a mathematical loop. Basically, the symbols on the clay were arranged in a way that changed meaning depending on which angle you read them from. It was a 3-dimensional code pressed into a 2-dimensional surface. This is where it gets crazy. The AI had seen this kind of structure before, but only in modern, high-level cryptography. The machine struggled to process the density of the grooves. It kept outputting error messages labeled infinite recursion. The writer of this tablet didn't just write words. They trapped the meaning behind layers of geometry. It was designed to keep the casual reader out. After 3 days of processing, the AI finally stopped crashing and started outputting single words. But these weren't the words the historians wanted to see. The AI printed out cycle, then return, then reset. The team thought the machine was hallucinating. They checked the source code. The AI explained that it wasn't translating word for word. It was matching the concepts of the shapes to its database. It was finding the closest emotional and structural match. The tablet was filled with clusters of symbols that represented water, but also suffocation. It had symbols for sky, but they were modified to mean solid. Everyone's obsessed with the idea of ancient aliens, but this was more grounded and way scarier. The AI was detecting a tone of panic. The handwriting wasn't neat and professional like a royal scribe, it was jagged, rushed. The person carving this was terrified. Finally, the team forced a full translation mode. The AI combined the loops and the symbols and produced the first coherent sentence. It read, "When the sky bends and the waters speak, the quiet ones rise again." The warning wasn't about the past, it was a forecast, the blackened sun. It's not that simple though. We've all heard the story of Noah or Utnapishtim building a boat to survive the rain. But the tablet told a different story. The AI translation described the days before the flood, and it didn't sound like a divine punishment. It sounded like a climate collapse. The text described heat that arrived when it should be cold. It spoke of the soil turning sour and soft, which is exactly what happens when rising groundwater salts the earth, a phenomenon called salinization that we know destroyed Sumerian agriculture. But the tablet went further. It said the stars vanished behind a veil of dust. Imagine living in a city made of mud bricks while the sky turns black at noon. The writer described a flood of dark air that suffocated the birds before the water ever arrived. This matches modern theories about volcanic winters or massive asteroid impacts throwing debris into the atmosphere. The people of Shuruppak were choking long before they drowned, and that's putting it lightly. The tablet claimed this wasn't an accident. The writer said they were commanded by the voice from the deep to carve this record. This is where the skepticism usually kicks in. You might think, okay, it's just a spooky story, but the AI cross-referenced these descriptions with geological core samples from the region. The data matched. Around 2900 BCE, there was a massive climate shift in Mesopotamia. The rivers changed course. The dust storms would have been blinding. The writer wasn't inventing a myth. They were reporting the weather. But here is the part that made the room go silent. The tablet said this destruction had happened before. It claimed that civilizations rise and fall in a perfect rhythm. The writer called it the Great Cleaning. They believe that the Earth itself has an immune system, and every few thousand years, it runs a fever to eliminate the infection. The tablet warned that the builders of the New World, that's us, would eventually trigger the same reaction. It said we would see the same signs, the sour soil, the black sky, the confused seasons, and once those signs appear, the water is inevitable. But the water wasn't the enemy. The water was the solution. The water was sent to keep something else locked underground. The horror beneath. What most people don't realize is that the Sumerians didn't just fear the gods in the sky. They feared what was under the mud. The next section of the translation was so dark, the AI flagged it as disturbing content. The writer shifted from talking about the weather to talking about the reason for the reset. The tablet stated clearly, the waters were not meant for men, they were meant for the ones without breath. The AI struggled to find a modern word for these entities. It cycled through demons, spirits, and anomalies. Finally, it settled on the phrase, shadow walkers. The text said these beings lived here before humanity took over the plains. They didn't breathe air. They fed on the stillness. In ancient Babylonian tradition, there are stories of the Apkallu, sages who lived before the flood. But sometimes, these sages are described as fishmen or beings that belong to the Abzu, the deep underground water. The tablet painted them not as teachers, but as parasites. It said the flood was sent to push them back into the cold places of the earth, where the pressure is too high for humans to go. The crazy part is, the writer claimed they aren't dead. The text said, they sleep in the veins of the world. When the human noise grows too loud, they stir. Think about that. The tablet suggests that human civilization, our cities, our digging, our noise, is what wakes them up. The Great Flood was essentially a way to seal the cracks and put these things back to sleep under miles of water and silt. The writer warned that if we forget the memory of the deep, we will accidentally wake them up again. The AI linked this to the concept of the Alulu, ancient chaos spirits. But the description was physical, not magical. It talked about them moving through the rock like worms. It talked about lights that appear near the ground right before a disaster. This connects to something very real. In modern science, we call them earthquake lights. strange, unexplained glowing orbs that appear near fault lines before a massive quake. Science says it's piezoelectric charges in the rocks. The tablet says it's the shadow walkers trying to get out. And the AI found proof they are active right now. The modern warning. Here is where the story moves from interesting history to actual nightmare fuel. The researchers asked the AI to compare the warnings on the tablet with current global events. They wanted to see if the signs the scribe wrote about were happening today. The machine processed millions of data points, climate records, seismic activity, ocean temperatures, and military sensor logs. It came back with a match rate of 87%. Let's break that down. The tablet mentioned waters rising where no water should rise. The AI linked this to the massive freak flooding we are seeing in deserts right now. Places like Dubai or the Sahara getting years of rain in a single day. The infrastructure isn't built for it, just like Shurapak wasn't. The tablet mentioned trembling beneath the sacred cities. The AI pointed to the massive seismic shifts in Turkey, Syria, and Iran, the exact same geography where this tablet was written. The fault lines are waking up. But the scariest connection was about the lights moving beneath the great waters. The AI pulled classified and public data from deep-sea observatories. It found reports from the Mariana Trench and the Philippine Sea. Sensors have been picking up slow-moving bioluminescence at depths where no fish should be able to produce that much light. These aren't squids. These are massive drifting patterns of light more than 10,000 meters down. The tablet said the ones without breath retreated to the deep places. And now, our sensors are picking up movement in those exact deep places. The AI concluded that the conditions for the reset are nearly identical to the year 2900 BCE. We have the sour soil, industrial farming eliminating the dirt. We have the dark air, pollution and dimming. We have the human noise vibrating into the crust. The final line of the AI's report wasn't a translation. It was a prediction based on the data. It read, "System instability imminent, cycle convergence detected." The tablet warned that before the end there is a great silence. The birds stop singing. The wind dies down. The world holds its breath. And right now, scientists are baffled by the sudden drop in insect populations and changing animal migration patterns. The silence is starting. Are we the builders of the future or just the cleanup crew for the next reset? What do you think? Are those lights in the ocean just biology, or is something waking up? Hit that like button if you want more deep dives, and subscribe so you don't miss the next warning. Stay curious.